Okay, Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the Islamic courses session on the discussion on the Islamic Declaration on Global Climate Change, 5 years on, update
Can hardly hear you, Mizan.
and challenges. I'm going to hand it over to, we have our host, Dr. Mustafa Ahsan from IFEES, and Professor Khalid, Professor Fachruddin, Professor Ibrahim, and Professor Azizan. So just housekeeping rules. Please keep your phones and PCs on mute. It's being recorded. If you're not registered already, and there is a Q&A session. So without further ado, I can hand it over to Dr. Mustafa.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'd like to welcome you to this special session on the Islamic Declaration of Global Climate Change, an update 5 years on. We're going to be looking at some of the progress that's been made within this interim period, the challenges that have been faced, and the opportunities that may have arisen both in the past and in the future. Many of you will be aware that this declaration was put together by a team of experts after much collaboration between academics, scholars, environmental practitioners, and was, alhamdulillah, eventually launched at the International Islamic Climate Change Symposium held in Istanbul in 2015. And this document is essentially divided into three parts. There's a preamble and introduction, then there's an affirmation of the reality of human beings and their place within the environment. And then finally, there's a call to action, which is aimed at a wide spectrum of actors, ranging from the individual all the way to civil society organizations, Islamic groups, as well as government institutions. So today we are very fortunate, alhamdulillah, to have a very distinguished panel of guests featuring 4 of the original team members who drafted this Islamic Climate Change Declaration. It's been 5 years since the declaration was issued, and our guests have kindly offered to provide an update on the progress that's been made since then, some of the challenges we mentioned earlier on, and the opportunities that may present themselves as we try and navigate this sort of space where Islam, environmental sustainability, and global climate change all come together. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our respected guests, starting with our keynote speaker, Datuk Professor Azizan binti Baharuddin. She's a senior lecturer and lead researcher at the Department of Science and Technology Studies at the University of Malaya in Kuala Lumpur. She was formerly Deputy Director of the Institute of Islamic Understanding in Malaysia, and then later Director for Civilizational Dialogue between 2000 and 2011. She's authored several books and is on several advisory committees, including the Ministry for Women, Family and Community Development, as well as Ministry of Science and Technology and Innovation. So we're really happy for her to join us. And then we have Dr. Fazlun Khalid. Ustad Fazlun has been with us on this journey for many years. He's the founder director of the Islamic Foundation for Ecology and Environmental Sciences based in Birmingham in the UK. He is, without question, considered a modern-day pioneer in the field of Islamic environmental ethics and is recognized as one of the 15 leading eco-theologians in the world. So that's not just in the Islamic space, but all faith groups and none. As well as his groundbreaking contributions in the field of human rights, he served as director of the Alliance of Religions and Conservation, where he did a lot of training, as well as a consultant to the UN. Then I'll move on to Dr. Fachruddin Mangunjaya from Indonesia. He's a conservationist, a researcher, and an associate lecturer at the Faculty of Biology at the Universitas Nasional in Jakarta. He holds a doctorate in environmental management and natural resources. And again, as we mentioned with the other speakers, he's very much involved on the front line in Islam and environmental activism. He serves as the chairman of the Center for Islamic Studies at the university mentioned earlier, and he's Vice Director of the Conservation of Environment and Natural Resources Division at the Majlis Ulama of Indonesia. Dr. Fachruddin has authored several books on the environment as well as articles, and he's considered one of the leading activists in this environmental space in the Muslim world. And finally, last but not least, we have Professor Ibrahim Ozdemir, who is a distinguished environmentalist as well as a professor of philosophy, ecology, and religion at the University of Ankara in Turkey. His doctorate was in philosophy, also from Ankara, and he was formerly Director General of the Department of Foreign Affairs at the Ministry of National Education in Turkey. Like our other distinguished guests, he's authored several books. Two special contributions were in the ethical dimension of human attitude towards nature in 1997, and he was co-editor of Globalization, Ethics and Islam. Professor Ibrahim, incidentally, was the founding member or founding president of Hasan Kalyoncu University in Gaziantep in Turkey. So in addition to his hat as an environmental activist, he has many other responsibilities. So it gives me great pleasure, and I'm really humbled to have our guest speakers here. Now, before moving further, I'd like to provide a bit of format. So what we'll do is each of our guests will provide some reflections on this declaration that was issued 5 years ago, and share some thoughts and insights into some of the local challenges that have been encountered, as well as any other things that have taken place throughout the world. Thereafter, we'll open up the floor for questions and answers, as well as comments from participants. So I'll hand over to our guests. May I ask Professor Fachruddin to sort of offer some reflections on the declaration of climate change that you were involved in drafting 5 years ago, as well as any other things that you feel are relevant to the discussion. Professor Fachruddin Mangunjaya.
Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alamin, wassalatu wassalamu ala asrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Amma ba'du. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, or the respected scholar, Professor Azizan, Sidi Fazlun, Professor Ibrahim, and all respected IC Iyad, Dr. Iyad from the UN is also attending with us. My reflection actually regarding this declaration is really significant to our country, indeed, because we as one of the leading, the biggest population Muslim in the world, as really need this is as a basic of triggering the movement. We right after back from Istanbul 2015, I was with Professor Din Samsudin at that day, and just directly after a weeks of the declaration, we formed a forum. It's called Siaga Bumi. Siaga Bumi is a forum of dialogues, and we make a kind of dialogue for the interfaith as well. We announced this declaration to the public. We invited press, we invited some scholar as well, activists, and also we disseminated to the government. And at that time, that was very nationwide been announced about the Islamic Declaration on Global Climate Change. Right after that, we went to, me and Dr. Din Samsudin also went to a declaration for UN SDGs in Bristol. We declare a document on how to achieve the UN SDGs as well. Parallel with this, we also have been moving to some initiative in Indonesia regarding so many improvement, together hand in hand with the government. Particularly, I would like to say that the Indonesian Council of Ulama is very responsive on this kind, with responding of that, also directly releasing, as their authority to release a fatwa on halting and prohibition and the law of prohibition for burning the land and forest, or the peatland, for forest actually, because we know as about 80 to 85% of Indonesian emission is coming from the burning of the forest and also the peatland. So we have a great significant endorsement from the declaration, as well a commitment from the Indonesian government, because they are also would like to achieve the emission target decrease, the increase decrease, and as well the national target for emission target as well, together with the other national in the UN FCCC target. I think one of the important is this declaration is endorsing also the activities as a basic of our movement, including the eco masjid, as well the many house of worship, not only Muslim but also other religions, and this is reflected many potential come along in the future, but that this declaration is very helpful in enlightening us, for a Muslim and a Muslim world. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Fachruddin, for your reflections and thoughts on how the situation has progressed in Indonesia specifically, but also in the wider sort of arena in regards to the climate change declaration. I'd now like to ask Dr. Fazlun Khalid to share some of his thoughts, clearly in a different context, but also there'll be commonalities with what Sidi Fachruddin has said. So Dr. Fazlun, please share with us some of your thoughts and insights.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would just like to reflect on the kind of weather we have been having, given that 5 years have elapsed since the declaration has been published. Now here in the UK, in the past we used to see regular snowfalls in the winter, December, January, February. And for the past few years, there's been hardly any snow. And it's been almost a dry winter. Sometimes there is rain, but no snow. But further up in Scotland, of course, there is some snow, but not to the degree that we have been used to. Sign of climate change. February, March have been very wet months, and sometimes portrayed as the kind of wettest months since the records have been made in the UK. April has been one of the hottest months for the past 500 years or so, or since records have been put together in the UK. May, where usually we have a reasonable amount of rainfall, it's been one of the driest months on record. Now we're in June in the summer, where we expect some sunshine. It's on the cold side, and now it's raining. I look through my window, it's raining. It's supposed to be summer. In Australia, we saw over the Australian summer last year, unceasing forest fires, millions and millions of hectares of forest burning, destruction of ecosystems, destruction of biodiversity, destruction of towns and villages, contributing enormously to global warming. Now we are witnessing all the aftermath of cyclones in the Bay of Bengal, and causing an enormous amount of havoc and population movements that have been unprecedented. What I'm saying is that since the publication of the declaration, since the publication of Pope Francis' Laudato Si, since the Paris 21 COP21 agreement, in spite of government action in certain parts of the world, we are in fact swimming against the tide. And I wonder if we will ever accomplish the 1.5 degrees centigrade limiting uh, uh, climate change, global temperature to 1.5 degrees centigrade. That has been proposed in the declaration, which is supported by everyone, and we support this initiative ourselves. But so far, there has been a lot of pessimism expressed as to whether we will even reach this target. But more than that, it's likely that we will exceed it. Promising a radical change in global temperature, in global climate, and as a result of us that backfiring on the human community. In a sense, the kind of experiences that we are now going through the COVID-19 pandemic, and will our lifestyles be the kind of lifestyle in the future that we are experiencing today? So where do we go from here? In my estimation, the Islamic Climate Declaration is a fundamental resource for the Islamic community throughout the world to be used and to be conscious of and to put into practice. We have translated the declaration into 11 languages, including Arabic, Urdu, Swahili, Indonesian, Turkish, Malay, and so on. We also have translated the declaration itself is an 8-page document, as the people, my colleagues who are joining me in this conversation will probably know. And now it has been compressed into an 8-page poster, which we hope will be translated into other languages. And already we have 8 languages in the pipeline, and we are processing them. And these compressed posters have already been translated into Turkish, Arabic, Malay, Indonesian, and so on. There are 8 which we are now processing, and hopefully we will provide them online for distribution worldwide, inshallah. So what needs to happen now is for practitioners, for communities, for mosques to take this on and enlighten their communities, their congregations on the value of the Islamic ethic in protecting the world, in protecting the environment, in living in a way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala expects us to, within the fitrah of His creation. In a sense, to emulate the model of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So how we are going to do this is something that we need to take seriously. Not very long ago, people, ulama, alims used to say to me, what has Islam got to do with the environment? We know now that it has everything to do with the environment, because our lifestyles are now of such an order that we make every demand that is possible on the environment, not really considering the what we are leaving behind for future generations. And this is a serious matter now. And I say that if we know that Muslims comprise of 1/5 of the world's population, if that is the case, if only a fraction of us, if half of us, or a quarter of us take this on ourselves, we will change. It is possible for Muslims to change. And it is also necessary that we change with other people. And the tools are at our disposal. Firstly, the verses of the Quran itself is inherently environmental, and the Sunnah of Rasul. And if we follow the Sunnah, I can guarantee you that if we live like and follow the Hadith literature, and live like the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to live, and I think we can change things for the better, not only for ourselves as Muslims, but for the rest of the world as well. So in a sense, people are depending on us. And let us then confront this challenge and offer something that is quite positive, something that we are quite capable of doing for the rest of the world, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fazlun Khalid, for your insightful remarks. And to be honest, you've been very frank and forthcoming in the current reality, which is what we need really. And we'll talk more about this later on, because it's no point sort of kind of living under an illusion that things are progressing when they're not. So the earlier we can remedy these things, the earlier we can make some interventions, the better. Now I'd like to move on to Professor Ozdemir, Professor Ibrahim Ozdemir. If you could kindly share some of your thoughts and insights into what's been happening in the Greater Turkey, in the Turkish region as well as beyond.
Oh, I couldn't hear you.
Oh no, I was just inviting you to say a few words about some of your reflections on how what's happened since the declaration was issued 5 years ago.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. I am glad to see my colleagues, especially our very respected dear sisters, Professor Azizan and Fazlun Khalid, Baharuddin, Iyad from Nairobi, and all others. I just want to continue where CD Fazlun Khalid finished. He said, we give a hope to whole people. In fact, with Professor Fazlun, we attended a conference which is organized by Oslo Peace Institute in February of this year. And as a part of our event, Professor, the well-known scholar Francis Fukuyama presented us a very gloomy picture of the future of the world. And we are surprised because given the facts, even it was just the unfolding of the COVID-19, nobody expected it will be a global pandemic for all of us. And Professor Fazlun Khalid will remember, I told him that given the realities of the world and using our discursive mentality, I reached the same conclusions. However, I do believe that the hard edge of the concrete realities we face, and in the face of these realities, hope can actively resist despair and effect concrete changes in how we conduct our lives. There exist considerable Quranic verses and the prophetic traditions on the virtue of hope. Do not despair of the mercy of Allah, says the Quran. Again, limitless is the mercy of Allah, and He has described through His names and attributes: the compassionate, the most generous, the forbearing one. The Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, said to us, "In qamat ala ahadikum al-qiyamah wa fi yadihi faslata falyagrisha." If the resurrection were established upon one of you while he has in his hand a sapling, then let him plant it. So hope is a mercy from Allah to us. Without hope, no mother would ever nurse a child, no one would ever plant a tree. I told to Francis Fukuyama, you know, losing hope is limiting the creative power of Allah, who believe in an omnipotent, who created the universe and adorns the skies with the sun, the moon and the stars, and the face of the earth with flowers, trees, gardens, orchards, and various animal species. Therefore, the Islamic Declaration for Climate Change, Declaration of Climate Change, was an outcry of Muslim environmentalists from Malaysia, Indonesia, UK, Turkey, US, and all other parts of the world, to their brothers and sisters over the globe, who are preoccupied with the emerging trends in daily problems, and to remind them their moral imperative, that is, never lose their hope for a better future and care for not only for themselves, but for our future generations. So with this, I have been invited, I have been attended many conferences, events, panels in Turkish. Besides this, I've been invited in the same year to Cape Town to attend an international conference. And then let me just remind you what we have done. For example, then IAT invited us to attend the UN Environmental Assembly in 2019 in Nairobi. Then me and Fazlun Khalid attended the workshop, Abrahamic Traditions and Environmental Change workshop in Rhodes Island in Greece. And we also prepared as a very good document, which also reflected the spirit of our original declaration. Then this is less known. Me and Fachruddin, we are asked to prepare a strategic document for the Muslim countries' Ministry of Environment, because IAT will remember in Nairobi they are asked any Muslim countries has a sound strategy for future, for a sustainable future. Unfortunately, they say no. Then we prepared almost 60 pages, a document of 6 pages, and it is accepted in Rabat last October. And when preparing this, we consulted with all our colleagues, or environmentalist colleagues. I think it was a big achievement for us. Again, there was, just two weeks ago, the International Association of Muslim Scholars, Ittihad Ulama al-Muslimin in Qatar, they asked me to help them to prepare a declaration about the COVID-19, what its relation to the environment. So I think, and if I can share with you, if you let me to share, I just want to share the impact of our declaration in international media, from Newsweek to Al Jazeera. Can I share this just, can you let me just share just few pictures? Yeah, just
try to do it, but I don't know if we have the system set up to allow it.
Okay.
Maybe on a future.
But it is important. Even a secular magazine like Nature, the magazine Nature, they will not cover anything about religion. But when it comes to environment, about future generations, the rights of intergenerational rights, everybody listen to us. This is very important for Muslim community to take lessons. We always complain. The Western media has a lot of stereotypes about us. They don't cover anything good or positive about Muslim community. But when we presented them a global perspective, how we care about whole creation. You see, look at the just racial problems is one of the environmentalist problems also. Black lives matters, yes. All creation matters. When we say all creation matters for us, we care about future generations. We care about, the well-being of all people. We are surprised. Newsweek, Times, The Guardian in UK, all leading media, they called our declaration. They say there are Muslims who care about the future. And what is good, we have a lady who is leading us, Professor Azizan, because in many meetings in the Muslim world, you just say male is deciding for the rest. But we have also Saba, wife of Fazlun Khalid. She was also in all our meetings. She enriched our meetings too. And also Aisha, Osman Levelian's wife. She also contributed a lot. There was some other sisters too. But Professor Azizan as a leading person, scholar on environmental issues, because she's one of the editors of the Islam and Ecology book by Harvard Press. So I I think we have done a great job, and I just all said at the opening session of the meeting, this declaration is a moral imperative upon us. What we say to our grandchildren in the future. Yes, I think this is enough for this term. Then I will talk. If you ask, I will give more information later.
Thank you very much, Professor Ibrahim Ozdemir, for some very powerful remarks on what has been achieved since the declaration, but also what the current reality is, which is very important. And finally, I'd like to move on to Professor Azizan Baharuddin from Malaysia. Very honored to have you here. Could you kindly say a few words, and I'm sure you'll be able to add to what our earlier speakers have said, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahil alamin wassalatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa ashabi ajma'in. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wa hlul 'uqdatam min lisani yafqahu qawli. Brother Mizan, Professor Mustafa, and colleagues at the organization whom I just got to know now, Islamic Circles. I hope to be able to learn more about your activities later. Respected members of the panel of the forum tonight, who might be within our majlis now, but we have not been interacting with them yet. Thank you very much for this special honor to have me part of this conversation tonight. I'm sure there is so many things to be said, but 5 years on from the production of the declaration in Istanbul, where the declaration started. I just want to quickly summarize what we have been trying to do in Malaysia in terms of getting the IPTC, the declaration, distributed amongst the people here in Malaysia, and also most importantly, acted upon and accepted. I just want to say that I am currently, it is a privilege given by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. I'm Director General of the Institute for Islamic Understanding in Kuala Lumpur. So this is like a carry on of my so-called academic career at the university before this. So here at the Institute, we've got the media platform. We've got digital television and we've got the radio, which is the only Islamic radio station in Malaysia, which broadcasts 24 hours a day. So we hope one day that all of you in this discussion tonight can come over and speak over our radio. So we've embarked upon a few clusters of activities. First and foremost, of course, is the usual formal forums and discussions in terms of seminars and publications, but they have been specialized for particular groups. For example, we've developed, or we did about 50 programs that covered theologians, like the muftis. We have 14 states in Malaysia, so we have 40 muftis in Malaysia. The impact that might have. So we've tried that, and then we develop programs for the public at large, for students and other particular groups like the NGOs and all of that. And then we also try to garner support from people of faith from other regions. So we've done a series of faith dialogues on environment in general and climate change in particular. And then we have embarked via our radio programs talking about the declaration, but drawing upon the Islamic tradition of Quranic literature and also Hadith literature. So we capitalized, for example, on the recent, the current pandemic of COVID-19. So we capitalize a lot on the narratives vis-a-vis how actually the current pandemic actually shows to us the truth of Surah Ar-Rum ayat 42, that you actually see destruction and fasad, right, on air, water, and everywhere, on land, due to the hands of. So if you study why COVID-19 has come to the fore, it is very much man-made. If you study, whether you subscribe to the various theories or not, but you can see that when the world shut down, so to speak, nature had a little bit of break. Here in Malaysia, for example, we have extremely polluted rivers. After 6 weeks, 7 weeks of being left alone, recovering in terms of its, fish population, etc. We see the air clearing up and all of that. So we capitalize on this kind of narratives to say that, we should be debunking the idea or the theory that says that climate change is a natural phenomena. I think we are all aware that there are lots of people in the world today who deny the fact of climate change being the result of human activities. As we've said, we can link to Surah Ar-Rum ayat 42, fasad appearing. And then we also have capitalized on the current, activities in Malaysia, whereby from the Islamic group, from the theological group, they want to bring Maqasid Syariah close together to the idea of the Sustainable Development Goals. As we all know, there's 17 goals inside there, and many of these is very much directly linked to climate change. So Maqasid Syariah looks at the 5 main important areas of life, right? So we capitalize on that kind of discourse to prove to the mainly Muslim population in Malaysia that, look, this is a wajib for you. This is not just a theory. This is a declaration. It's not another mental exercise. This is real for you. You'll be asked later on in Qiyamah. Allah will ask you, what did you do? So I think with all due respects, we really applaud all the work, all the many pages of documents. Okay, this very beautiful book done by Brother Fazlun, the latest story on capturing the whole story of why climate change, how climate change, and what went wrong, what we didn't do right. I think 2 issues need to be underlined. One, that science literacy is highly important for people to understand this declaration and to act upon it. And I do not know the status in other Muslim countries, but in Malaysia, for example, science literacy is quite low. Like just take COVID-19. Some people ask me, is the picture of the virus really like that? Or is that just from the imagination? They find it very difficult to understand why you have to put the face mask. Where's the virus? We can't see the virus. You understand, yeah? So secondly, the issue of tadabbur. Yeah, we in Muslim countries, I don't know, but we haven't done a proper study, but we still, and this is not wrong, we're still harping on the fact that we should focus on the tajweed, on the tarannum, but not enough on the tadabbur. You have to reflect, you have to look at nature. When you read the Quran, you have to relate what you read in the Quran and look at nature and put the two together. Then only I think this declaration will come alive, will really work, you see. And so we're working hard on all of this, and we have engaged, alhamdulillah, with policymakers. We've engaged with at least 3 ministers, and we are talking with people who are actually in charge of, working on policies vis-a-vis the environment, and we hope to achieve, something of real significance in the future. We want to see real changes. So right now, the ground is like fertile with new ideas. Everybody's grappling with what will the new economic system look like. See, already you can find Islamic solutions. I mean, the solution is you have to abandon extreme capitalism, which is one of the root causes for climate change. So I think now is a very important time for Muslim scholars, Muslim activists to pursue the goals of the declaration. And I think we need to build upon the declaration. I think the original 8-page, fine. It's very nice to hear that you're putting it into posters and all of that. But I think myself, for example, I think I've not done enough, we need to work more. We have to be more creative and more imaginative, and with the platform of digitalized means of communication, I think we can do this. So I laud and applaud and congratulate the attempt made by Islamic circles tonight, and I hope this is not the first and last time we talk about this topic. That's all for now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Azizan, for a very passionate and very eye-opening, actually, set of comments. Because, as you say, there's only so much you can achieve through documentation, which has its place for sure. But then there's the implementation, the action that needs to emanate as a result of that. And if we don't take this opportunity right now, when to be honest, the world is very vulnerable. We're in a state because of this virus, which is such a small creation of Allah. And this, again, this is very much part of the environmental philosophy, that we're part of a wider creation, and it just shows that our place, our position in the fragile universe is actually very small. And if that doesn't make us realize that we need to take climate change, environmental sustainability, the whole sort of care, the khilafah for the rest of creation, if you don't take it seriously, then we may never get another opportunity like this. So no, we'd like to thank all our speakers who have shared their insights so far. And so I'd like to now open up the forum to the rest of our participants to ask any questions that you might have, any comments that you feel are valid or relevant. Please feel free to send them in. You can sort of speak or text them in. We're waiting to hear from you, inshallah.
Brother Mustafa, whilst waiting, can I just seize the opportunity to just say one or two more sentences?
Absolutely.
For example, vis-a-vis the virus. Yeah. People ask me, so you love tadabbur so much. Is virus in the Quran? I say yes. Of course, God doesn't mention the word virus, but I give you analogies. Virus, very small creatures, the fly, and even smaller things than that. Things that are smaller than that. So I think this is what will excite the young people to see that the Quran is really a mu'jizat. I mean, our declaration, we use the Quran, but then again, we are not people to actually declaration is saying is the truth as far as the Muslim is concerned, as far as the Muslim worldview is concerned. So what is most critical in the Muslim worldview? The Quran and the Hadith. So are we connected? Yeah, especially people on the ground, they are the ones who use the plastics. They are the ones who do all the bad things to nature. But they do it without realizing that is the wrong they're doing. So the answer is still going back to the Quran and appreciating the Quran, and the declaration is like a document that actually helps us, to crystallize, to summarize what our duty is to nature, as what the Quran and Hadith is saying. I mean, the Quran is the answer. So right now, Malaysia just launched, as of yesterday, over one of our local television stations, to read the Quran every day for the next 2 years. 2 pages of the Quran every day. So it's trying to get a worldwide reach, but then because of the language used, it's just in Malaysia now. So I think this is high time. We speak and we speak, but then the kalam of Allah, we're not engaging it. We're not engaging with it directly. We're not telling the young people, look, all this comes from the Quran, because we have issues like pluralism, LGBT, atheism, agnosticism. We sweep it under carpet, and then now we get upset and angry when people don't want to act upon the declaration. So sorry, I'm not supposed to do that.
No, not at all. I really appreciate
your time.
We have a question from
need.
Iyad.
Legally.
Sorry, so we have a question from Iyad Abu Mughli, who'd like to say something. You can have the floor, please. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for giving me the floor. First of all, I would like to extend my deepest regards and appreciation and admiration to all the distinguished speakers and members of this webinar today, who have been working relentlessly over the years and years in bringing up the importance of Islam in the environment arena. The work that has been done is tremendous and has contributed to understanding the relationship between the religion as in Islam and environmental movement. Not only understanding the theoretical aspect of it, but bringing also the practical aspects and how it does contribute to solving some of the environmental issues. The declaration that was adopted in 2015 was a great movement forward, and it has been appreciated by so many people, not only Muslims, but also from other religions and international organizations. And as me from the UN, we have adopted it and advocated its importance within UNFCCC and so on and so forth. What my point of view is that the declaration probably has been absorbed by scholars, by thought leaders, by like-minded, educated and well into the issues of environment, but it has not trickled down to the communities, to the everyday person. And that is a challenge. And that is why we have not seen much of a reaction to it or interaction with it. So advocacy was missing, advocacy and outreach. The second point is that maybe it should have been submitted to a number of Islamic organizations for adoption, for political adoption, rather than just endorsement. The political adoption makes it or breaks it, makes the declaration as a tool to be used by these institutions in their discussions, deliberations, as well as disseminating it to the local communities and the ordinary people. And I am very honored that I had the pleasure to invite and host a number of my dear colleagues in the UN Environment Assembly of 2019, and I hope that we will invite even more next year in February for the UNIA 5. But again, we need to put down practical measures that shows how Islam has addressed all of these issues centuries ago and has the solutions for many environmental issues. Not only climate change, but the biodiversity. I mean, there are a mention of 57 species of plants in the Quran. What does that mean? How does that project Islam in being an environmental religion? We have started the ecosystem decade of restoration. We do need to contribute to that powerfully. We, of course, appreciate what Laudato Si has done and the role of the Vatican, but we have also a power of message. We have the power of having the Quran and the Hadith and the Sunnah as actually roadmaps for tackling environmental issues. So we do need to put hands together to empower, emphasize, expand our outreach and the message of Islam. So thank you very much for giving me the floor. Thank you.
Okay, we have a few more questions. We have a lot of questions for you. So I'm going to request Muti Rahman. So Muti Rahman, I'm just going to unmute you.
Thank you. Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for wonderful talks by everyone. And just to follow up on that statement just being made, I really liked when Azizan said, we need to make the declaration come alive to people by bringing their lived experience to the declaration, so they see these connected together. And the context that has been given, particularly, is as in Muslim countries like Malaysia and Turkey. And as a second-generation Muslim in England, and growing up in England in a specific environment where Islam has a particular environment, an ideology or dynamism in communities that prevents this lived experience coming in. Do you have any advice or guidance? And I know, around this question of advocacy to try and bring more of how to bring this aliveness to communities. And just one example I just want to mention is Fachruddin, who I saw is on the call today, because we are part of the Extinction Rebellion movement as well. And we have a group, Exam Muslims, which gave a talk with Fachruddin there. He talked about the fatwas that's happened around sustainability. And we've been exploring how we might be able to do that in England. But do you think that is a good way in which you can bring this adoption to communities in England as one way, and any other things you might have guidance around as well?
Dr. Fachruddin, if you'd like to give some of your thoughts on this particular question, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. Well, this is quite a thoughtful question. Maybe Professor Ibrahim can also help and the other scholars. To me, I'm living in a different else. We living in Indonesia in dominating with mostly Muslim, with the Muslim majority. But if you are saying that you are a generation within that, in UK, second generation, seeking for that kind of, advices such as fatwa, it is necessary if you look up of the, to find a certainty to answer about that situations, because the young people actually to me is always looking for the answer, and we can find the answer is from the great scholars who is the mufti, which is with a competence of knowledge, as warasat al-anbiya, the replacement of the prophet, to answer the challenge and everything that can inspire the life of the Muslim. And fatwa is, it can be institutionalized or also not institutionalized. It is just advice and non-binding. So to us, in Indonesia, we have a very deliberated on using that fatwa in also helping the government outcome, So, and sometimes the fatwa was also adopted by the formal law or the positive law by the government. For example, the fatwa on munakahat, on the marriage, the fatwa on the Islamic finance, Islamic Sharia, etc., etc. That's my answer. Thank you.
Thank
Maybe
you,
the others,
May I contribute something?
Yes, please.
I think this is a very important question. I used to live in Finland in last 2 years. I just returned to Istanbul in January, and I met a lot of young people. They want to be a part of their community there. Then they invited me to Germany. Now I am also supervising some young Muslims in Austria and even in Australia. So what they need, we have to present them, as Azizan said, how Quran look at the nature, how the Quran connects us with the rest of the nature. Because some of us, we come with our cultural background we still cannot, especially there's a gap between young generation and their parents in Finland, as far as I see. So when I talk with them and I presented them about how to look at nature, what is the meaning of nature? Believe me, there was a Pakistani brother, he said, as I am reading the Quran for the first time, I said, look, all these trees is created by Allah. Look at the birds, look at everything, this beautiful country, everything. Then they can easily connect themselves with the community, the local community, with the Finnish people who care more about the environment more than us, even on secular basis. But when you say, I care for environment, I care for future generations, they have a ear to listen to you. So I think the best thing to present our young generation is to present them environmental perspective. Just let me say, after the declaration, there are so many young people, they are doing their master degree and PhD in environmental philosophy, eco-theology, environmental history. Just this week, in this June, I will be on chair of I will be on defense committee of 3 master students, and majority of them, they are ladies. They care more about environment and environmental issues. And as far as they are, even at the level of master degree, they will make a great contribution to the discourse. So once more, I convinced the message reach the young generation. We have to be patient. We just plant a seed in the heart of young people. It is, we need to be we have to be a little bit patient, but although it doesn't mean we have to be lazy. All of us, we are trying hard. Believe me, whenever Fazlun Khalid passed me an email or say, Brother Ibrahim, can you attend this meeting at this? I just consider it as he's coming from one of, I just give other issues. I said this is very important because all of us, we are doing this for the young generation, for next generation even. So we have to let them to know we are working for them. Wherever I go in South Africa, they didn't leave me. There are so many people that they are working on environment. Just so humble people, so young people. And there is a sister, I couldn't believe it. First time I went to Cape Town, it was just after the Harvard conference, 98. Then I gave a 1-month course at the Cape Town University. And they invited me after this declaration, after 15 years. Then when I was waiting for my my talk, a lady gave us a very beautiful talk. But she said, I am glad today to see Professor Ibrahim. He visited our university 15 years ago. And for the first time, I hear the connection of Islam with the ecology and environment at this summer school at that time. But now, Professor Ibrahim, I have a PhD in environmental studies. I said, this is the Nobel Award of a scholar. So just, let us to meet young people, talk with them, and present them new ideas. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Mustafa, can I come in?
Yes, Dr. Fazlun, please.
Yeah. Right. Okay. What I need to say is that after 40 years of being engaged in this work, I have to say, and it might come as a shock to some people, that there is no such thing as environmentalism in Islam. Islam is the environment. And quite simply, if you follow the Sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you are an environmentalist. He manifested conservation. Conservation is jargon. It's a new word. That is, I would say conservation is living with the fitrah, living with Allah's creation, living with his original creation in the way that he expected you to live. He expected you to live in the way that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam behaved, because he came to teach us good behavior. So Islamic environmentalism is how you behave with the environment, how you behave with the trees, the animals, the squirrels, the birds, the bees, your neighbor, your community, your country, how you behave. That's as simple as that. And that is the key verse in the Quran, which will give you a direction. وَفِي الْأَرْضِ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ وَفِي الْأَرْضِ آيَاتٌ لِلْمُوقِنِينَ وَفِي أَنفُسِكُمْ أَفَلَا تُبْصِرُونَ. There are signs on the earth for those people with understanding. And the word signs is ayat. The ayat in the Quran is the same ayat in nature. The tree is an ayat of Quran. The bird is an ayat of Quran. The river is an ayat of Quran. So we have the external ontological Quran, which we are a part of. And when Jibreel alayhi salam came to Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Iqra bismi rabbika alladhi khalaq." Read in the name of your Lord who created. Created what? And the book that Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam read was Allah's creation, his outward manifestation of life. That was his creation. That is where we need to. So it is, in a sense, a very simple message. Now, coming to today, having lost this dimension of understanding the natural world, having distanced ourselves from the natural world, having created the natural resource as a resource for our consumerism, we are now struggling to understand what it is that we are consuming and what it is that we have to divest. That is a challenge that we have to contend with. So what we are reduced to now, and in the 80s and 90s, as my colleagues will know, having visited Indonesia and Malaysia and Turkey and partnered myself with Fachruddin and Azizan and Professor Ozdemir, we all know that there is something that it's made a secret. It's not a secret. We are nature. We are part of nature. How can we be otherwise? How can we be otherwise? So this is why we have, and getting the Muslims to understand it means that in our endeavors we put something called ilmul khalq, knowledge of creation. There are 260 verses almost in the Quran dealing with the root of khalaqa, khaylam kha, khalq, khalaqa, khaliq, khaliq, creator, khaliqul bari wal musawwir, Allah, the creator, the giver of form, giver of shape. You see, so we need to go through that process to begin to understand. And then the Indonesian scholars created something called fiqh al-biya, knowledge of the natural systems management of Allah's creation. So we have ilmul khalq, knowledge of creation, we have the fiqh on natural systems management, and we have the package, folks. Dear brothers and sisters, we have the package. So what are we doing? So we need to galvanize ourselves and begin to, inshallah, maybe work from the declaration itself. And Mizan, can you put up the declaration poster, which is on the home page of the website? Is it possible, Mustafa, Mizan, to put it up?
I think
if you can't see it, please go to the home page of www.ifees.org.uk. That is that one page poster. Our hope is to get it printed and translated into, there's an encapsulation. That poster is an encapsulation of 8 pages we put together with Professor Ibrahim, Professor Baharuddin, Fachruddin, Mangunjaya, Abdul Majid Tabak, and others put together in Istanbul. Uthman Llewellyn, Saudi Arabia, and that is the end product. This is an encapsulation. And what we would like to see is that this poster hanging in every mosque in every corner of the world, in every Muslim community center in every corner of the world. And people look at it every day, and not just look at it and do what they're expected to do, to bring something new, to bring something fresh. And don't forget, if we give this message out, it is dawah. We don't have to do anything. We just have to do it. If we do it, then people look at, oh, well, Muslims have the answer. Well, let us do what they do. You see? So we have the answer in our hands. So it is up to us how soon we do it, how quickly we do it, how quickly we are motivated. And the coronavirus is Allah sending us a message. He stopped everything. Pause. Come on, people have created, push the pause button. Now we are in pause button. We are locked in, we are locked out. We are indoors, we are doing nothing. When we are doing nothing in our homes, we can breathe fresh air again. Carbon dioxide emissions have reduced. Turtles are returning to the sandy beaches in various parts of the world, relaying their eggs. Dolphins are returning to the rivers. Rivers are getting fresher, as Professor Azizan just said, in Malaysia and other parts of the world. So that is the answer. So when the pause button is lifted out, what are we going to do? Go back and consume our way out of this mess? Of course we don't. We have to change. There has to be radical change. And the people who have the answer in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not forgive us. If we know that, there are many of us who don't know the answer. We have to find the answer. And when we find the answer, and if we don't act accordingly, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not forgive us. It is our destiny.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fazlun, for really hitting home the need to bring this declaration to life and actually sort of work towards implementation. It seems like there's been a lot of efforts in terms of education, trying to sort of make people aware, which needs to continue. But at the same time, I think the connection, especially to the young people, of how this, how the essence of Islam is Islamic environmentalism, that needs to be sort of emphasized more and needs to become a reality. We've got a lot of comments and questions, so I'd like to sort of whiz through some of those. There's a brother called Usaimi who wanted to ask about some of the synergies between different interfaith initiatives. And perhaps, Brother Usaimi, could you clarify your question, because it wasn't that obvious?
Hello? Can you hear me?
If you could increase your volume, that would be good.
Okay, about it.
Just a little bit more, it's faint, but otherwise you should be fine.
Okay. Okay. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. I'm Usaimi from Malaysia. Basic question is how you do interfaith program with another interfaith group. Basic, very, very basic. How you approach another interfaith group. That is my question.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe I can attempt to give a short response.
Yes, please.
Okay. At IKIM, for example, Saudara Usaini, we actually engage with interfaith dialogue activities for many years now. And so, the aim of that is to create a sense of harmony between people of faith groups in Malaysia. As you know, Malaysia is a very, very plural society, and the issue of solidarity and unity is an important one. So one of the topics that we have used as a common theme for the various representatives of the various religions to come and sit together and dwell upon is the issue of environment and climate change. So we discover that every group will try very hard to draw upon their own traditions, words of wisdoms, guidelines. So like Brother Fazlun said, this is one way of da'wah. I mean, like without attempting to compete with one another, we're just telling other people what, if you're a Muslim, we just say what the Quran says about this. And we, of course, you know, sorry Fazlun, we've done our own version of the poster. So we distribute it everywhere and to everybody, you know, short shoving it down their throat. So that we have been well accepted, and everybody comes out, understanding a little bit better how the other groups view the same problem, because this is a commonly faced problem, and this is the another message that Muslims today have to realize. They are ummatan wasatan. They are the middle group, what does not middle, the moderate. Okay, so what does moderation mean? What does being middle people mean? So we are supposed to be witness onto other people. So therefore, when we actually elaborate with them the contents of this, they react with surprise. Oh, seriously, your Quran says all these things? So directly, you would have made them understand, like you said just now, the message, which is not just for Muslims, in the case of Malaysia, for Malay Muslims, but for everybody. And and as Allah says, oh Muhammad, your job is just to tell. Hidayah is from me. So the problem is sometimes Muslims, they get overexcited when they have other interfaith groups sitting with them. They want to convert people. So, there's so many things to be said about the lackings that is prevalent among Muslims. First is science literacy. When I say science literacy, I don't mean you get a PhD in physics, no. You have to understand now that your body is 1 trillion cells. You've got a heart that pumps 24 hours a day, how many million times a year? You've got 2 kidneys that actually functions. We are on autopilot. That is the sign of ayah, like Fazlun says. This is what I mean by science literacy. I don't mean, just because I come from a science background, I'm shoving this down. No, I think science arises from the Islamic civilization. So seriously, this declaration is actually linked to so many other things within Islam, within the body of knowledge of Muslims, and like we all said just now, there is so much to be done. And to Brother Yusaini, come over to IKIM. Where are you in Malaysia? So it's strange that we speak through London to each other, So why can't you just drop in and we can dwell upon this further and to answer very quickly? How do we do this? We do this by putting the various representatives together, and we speak on the common issue, which is climate change. And so people learn from each other what their traditions are saying, are teaching. So we embrace each other's values, especially those which are not against our own norms, so to speak. I don't know whether that answers. Yeah, inshallah.
Yep. Makes sense.
Thank you very much. It's brilliant. There's been a comment from Sister Nana Firman. It's regarding the Islamic Circle of North America, the Islamic Society of North America. They made a public announcement to divest all their financial assets from fossil fuel industries back in 2016. And also the FIC Council of North America called for a shift towards clean renewable energy based on electric transport systems, both in Canada and the US. So there is a call upon Islamic investment houses and Islamic funding administrators to move away from fossil fuels to renewable resources. What kind of movement have we seen practically manifested? I know there's been a call towards it, and that was also in the declaration itself, to well-off nations and countries that are fossil fuel dependent to sort of move towards a green economy. Have we seen any progress on that front anywhere? On a governmental level, because a lot of the stuff we've been talking about is on the civil society and individual level.
Can I answer? Mizan, can you show the screen that I sent you? I giving an Indonesian example of the permanent response on the climate change by using the Islamic sukuk. I think you scroll down, Mizan. In Indonesia, this is government regulation on after 2015 in achieving some of the Paris Agreement, and one of that is the willingness of the government role to make a moratorium for peatland. Peatland in Indonesia is huge, and I think the largest in the world. And this is caused if the peatland is burned, and when it takes or for a couple of weeks, it can be the similar emission to Germany in 1 year, like that's happened in 2015, the emission of carbon emission. So that is why an answer of that. And if you scroll down for that sukuk, okay, go down, down. So yes, this is the implementation of fatwas of the training. We done a training for the imam, and we are also enlightening with Islam and science, as Professor Azizan says. These ustads enlightening with the methodology of Fazlun Khalid, Quran creation and conservation. So we're using that methodology. Fazlun, thank you for disseminating that, putting that ijaza to me, and we disseminate that. Scroll down. This is scroll down, please. Yes, this is scroll down, the green sukuk. Green sukuk, we see the Sharia compliant investment for renewable energy. This is the first, I think, in the world that Indonesian released $2 billion sukuk in 2019 for renewable energy and everything that support the initiative for environment and clean energy initiative. Scroll down at 11. This is some so it can be for solar panel, biogas, wind energy, or ambition of energy efficiency. Yeah, that's all. And following the answer, I think this is one of what Professor Ibrahim Ozdemir said, that the adoption strategy on promotion cultural and religious roles in protection of the environment. This is have been adopted by Environmental Ministry in Morocco, and the document was also inspired by Islamic Declaration on Climate Change and some of lesson learned from the Muslim regarding of using the existing institution such as zakat, hajj, madrasa or masjid or iman and all everything that can be meaningful for the implementing the declaration as well the climate change challenge. Next, it will be I think maybe a lot of you don't know that Nur Sultan Kazakhstan was claimed awarded by as green city in the Islamic world. This is a scheme released by ISESCO, Islamic Science and Cultural Organization, and Rabat, Morocco. So the Muslim world is already get in on this kind of initiative to make a better future and better practicalities for the cities as well. Why of that, not only for beyond this declaration, but also in the practice for the future generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, it's I wasn't aware about Kazakhstan because, like in many other oil exporting countries, it does give the impression that it's perhaps a bit disconnected from environmental awareness and sustainability. But that's quite reassuring.
Yeah, Mustafa.
Yes, please.
I would like to not miss this opportunity, and I have to show this book that just come out and endorsed by the panel. If you can get this out, can I? Where am I?
Higher, Fazlun, hold it higher.
Higher.
There we are.
Okay.
Signs on the Earth.
I got it.
It came out last year. Signs on the Earth. That's the verse of the Quran وفي الأرض آيات للموقنين, and it's published by Cube in the UK. It's available in, it gives you an up-to-date thinking, I hope, endorsed by the panel members, I have to assure you, and it's available in Amazon. Science on the Earth, Islam, Modernity, and the Climate Crisis. I think what we have talked a lot, and I think my own summation of all this, that in my view, nothing will change. We can continue to articulate pious words from any holy book by anybody, but my own view is that the problem is systemic, in that the model, the economic model that we have is a consumerist paradigm. If that does not change, nothing will change. But I'm also at the same breath saying that there is an Islamic model that we may not be able to implement it immediately, but at least people will have to think about it and look at it and say, how can this be an answer? You know, because if we don't do it, there will be something like a reaction that we're having to the COVID-19 virus. It will be sudden and drastic. So what I'm suggesting is that there is a gradualization process, better if it's gradual. And that can only happen if we begin to understand what it is that we are in, what it is that we are in, the system, and what is it that we are, what we are expected, what expectations of the system from us, and how we function in it, or what is the alternative can save us all and create a new paradigm of looking at life, working within the stress tensions that nature, the goodness that nature provides us, and working with the stresses and tensions that we cause it to create the kind of things that we're experiencing today. That is my simple message, that we have to begin. So if we don't begin to start thinking about it and articulating it, other people will not. You see, but I also have to say at the same, when I say other people, this is a blanket statement, that also cutting edge intellectuals begin to question the current paradigm. Even the Dutch government is thinking about looking at what the economic agenda is, what it is that we can modify to take us away from this growth and consumeristic agenda that is destroying the natural world, that is in fact nurturing us. If you don't look at it, we are committing, suicide. We are shooting ourselves in the foot. That is my message. And so the Islamic declaration has to mean something. And that meaning is that there has to be change. There has to be change. And I say it has to come from us. And we have to lead the way, inshallah.
Inshallah. We have a question from Brother Muhammad Degia. I think I'll open the floor to him. It was regarding how to deal with implementation deficit. Brother Muhammad, if you'd like to pose your question.
Yes, Assalamu alaikum. And thank you to all the presenters for your really excellent presentations. I am from Barbados, the Caribbean, small island developing state. Climate change is an existential threat. I was also one of the, my country's representative at the UNFCCC negotiations for a couple of years. My question relates to the implementation deficit. We have this really excellent, well articulated Islamic declaration. But how do we ensure that it's not just a document and it is actually, it has meaning? Because most of the Islamic countries in the negotiations do not, their negotiating positions are not reflective of any of the values or principles outlined in the declaration. Some of the most belligerent anti-action countries in the negotiations are Muslim countries, led by the Gulf countries, who influence a lot of other Muslim countries with their financial wealth. So the Muslim countries, many of them in the negotiations are actually, resistant to strong action, which I personally, as a Muslim and as someone from a country that is threatened existentially by climate change find offensive. How do we ensure that our Islamic declaration, and I say our even though I'm not from a Muslim country because I'm a Muslim, how do we ensure our declaration is not just something that looks very pretty on a shelf, but the values in it are not represented by the countries which, or governments which claim to represent us? And my second comment has to do with the COVID-19 and the environmental, supposed environmental, some sort of recovery. That recovery that we are seeing is short term, and it's the price that has been paid for that recovery has been paid for by the most vulnerable. It has been paid by thousands and thousands of lives. So I don't see that supposed economic recovery as something to hold up as an example or as something to be proud of, because it has been done as a consequence. It has not actually been done because of concrete policies to address climate change, and the price has been paid not by those who caused the problem, the capitalists and the industrialists and the rich countries who pollute. It has been paid for by the most vulnerable. So we have to bear that in mind when we're praising the environmental recovery that has happened by chance from COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think your comment actually encapsulates some of the other comments that have come regarding policy and faith and that missing connection. We have the document, we have the manual, we have the Quran, all the theories there, and there's implementation that's happened in the past. How do we now escalate that to the policy level in these countries? So yeah, if respective guests could sort of weigh in on this, that would be appreciated.
Interesting question. Interesting question. How do we do that? I think. Okay, can I take the floor? I think I'm conscious of the fact that I've been talking too much. Mustafa, can I speak?
Yes, please. Yeah, now go for it, and then I'll ask the others to join as well.
I want to make room for the others as well. I mean, I think it's an excellent question. The short answer to that question really is that we are globalized. Every single nation state in the country is locked in the world is locked into a globalized system, which is enthralled to Wall Street or the World Bank. This is where we are. And if we are participating in any negotiations anywhere in the world, whether it's climate negotiations or United Nations, anywhere in the world, we are talking within the paradigm set for us or predetermined for us. So Muslim countries, no exception. We all playing the game because we are modeled on a growth agenda defined for us for somebody else, and our populations are all consumers. So we are in that model. So now the questioner related this to the climate declaration. It is likely that the rulers of so-called Islamic countries look at the climate declaration, and either they do two things. One is look at it piecemeal, take what is good for them to articulate to the populations, and dismiss the rest of the document. You see, what I'm suggesting is that we need to begin to think of systems and systemic change, which the Muslim countries at this time, I'm on firm ground here, are not even thinking about, because they are, in fact, and the evidence of this is the tall buildings and the clock towers that Muslim countries want to build everywhere. No matter where you go, and that's where we are. So where can we start? I mean, it can start as a groundswell. The ulama are no longer responsible for articulating foreign policy or economic policy, and they've been sidelined by the rulers, and they build mosques and their kutubas are written for them. They don't have that kind of freedom. And who are advising the Islamic leaders in Islam, so-called Islamic countries, are the West-educated technocrats. These technocrats are economists and who studied in business schools or universities, designed for the growth agenda system, designed for the globalized system, not designed for an Islamic model. So it shouldn't surprise anyone that the Islamic leaders don't pay much heed to the climate declaration that we have produced, although we can urge them to do so. But I again repeat, what I'm saying is that this has to start from the grassroots level. We need to educate the ulama. We need to persuade the ulama to take on these issues and begin to look at this and present this and their understanding of it in the local madrasas, have khutbahs on these issues, and begin to educate the population. And hopefully one day the leaders will be educated as well, and they will change their policies and really come down on people who burn forests and who burn peat and who pollute and who plasticize the seas and the rivers and the watersheds of the world. You see, so we have to start somewhere, and saying we have to start by us, from us, because to come from the local, to go global. So to quote a phrase, think global, act local. Bismillah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to add to Fazlun Khalid. Brother Muhammad raised a very important question. You have to be patient. Just remember, when the Declaration of Human Rights is accepted, half century ago, nobody was aware of what is going to do with this declaration. The declaration about children rights, etc. But by the time that it become a norm for humanity, what we are doing, I think, will be, especially we are planting seeds in the heart of the young Muslims. They will find the solution. For the solution is not in our hands. Solution, we will discover solution in the Quran, in the Sunnah of the Prophet, with a new mentality, with a paradigm shift. From our own problems, we have to look at them. If we just, but we also we should never forget a reality. The politicians who is elected democratically, they are always care about next election to be re-elected. So this is why they are called as a short-sighted. There is a rare politician who care about to invest in 2050 or 2060s. You see, they just invest to win new election. But there was good signs, you know. There was five nuclear power plant in Turkey. They say we will not use filter, which is based on fossil fuel, fossils. But, and although it is accepted in the parliament, there was a big reaction in the community. Religious people, even secular people, they joined their voice, their energy. They say, we don't want this. Then the president of Turkey just nullified this decision. They said, no, you have to use filters for your power plants. You see, by the time, you know, we need time. We have to be patient, but working hard.
Inshallah.
When you see a child is dropping from the 10th store to the floor, and you will watch it or you will run to save the child. We are running to save the child. Although our number is little, we are growing every day.
Let's run faster.
Yeah, thank you.
Alhamdulillah.
Can I bring in Professor Azizan to sort of bring in some insight in regards to the Malaysian political perspective? Because obviously you've been advising some of the government institutions there, and through sort of that act of being a link, a connection, surely there should be some impact, hopefully, on the thinking and the policies that Malaysia, for example, might want to implement going forward. Could you share some of your thoughts and the approach, the methodology that you use to try and get them on board? Because that's varies from country to country.
I want to pick on what Brother Fazlun said, think global and act local. I think that the question that Brother Muhammad from Barbados posed to us, the evergreen question, and we can answer that in many, many ways. You know, you can just throw your arms in the air and say, what's the use? You know, we're not making enough progress, not fast enough, and all of that. Malaysia is no different from any other country that Fazlun has described. You're all locked into the so-called capitalistic system that you know the world has been connected to all these years. But after having said that, if I may share, you know, if you think it's a useless thought, it's okay. But I think all of us who are in this so-called struggle need to have a personal theology. You know, the second brother who asked the question, he said, I'm a second generation Muslim in UK. For him, he didn't quite get it. I wanted to ask, first and foremost, do you do your salah? Do you do your dua? How is your relationship to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Never ever forget that if Allah wills it, He just says kun, and everything will change. All this is a test for all of us. So I think we should ask this kind of questions, but we should not be overwhelmed by this kind of questions. And what I fear most is that asking this kind of questions too many times, too often, will wear you out. It is better to have the map in front of you, you know, to understand that this is what you need to do, right? And then you have, like you said, you have already the declaration, you have your Quran and everything. In the here and now, personally, you should have a logbook. What do you do every day? How much dua do you do? How much da'wah do you do? How much struggle do you do? I think if you don't have this kind of commitment at the most conscious level, at the innermost level, I think it's going to be very difficult because we'll keep on asking that question. Like he says, it's an existential problem for him. I mean, island states, they are in danger all the time, you know. And then we keep lamenting the fact that governments are slow to change. Who are we to change the government? Like, with all due respect, right? We just had a change of government. Yeah, brother. Yeah. And our institute, the government institute, hello, excuse me, you know. And what do? We attend post-cabinet meetings. Yeah, we put forward our ideas. But despite all of that, I think we have a huge space where, of all the institutes in Malaysia, we have a radio station, for heaven's sakes. The question for me and my colleagues at the institute is, how much of that wonderful 24-hour period of time do we use to propagate this knowledge at all levels, at the most sophisticated, down to the most basic level? And I think the most basic level, we have to do this with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is a test upon you. Do you think that you say you have iman, I will not test you? This is the test. And like you said, COVID-19 is such a fantastic sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you see, sometimes it's like sometimes we are conventional, sometimes we are not, sometimes we are scared of saying out loud things like dua and salat and all that. But basically it boils down to that. Zikirullah. All the plants and animals, the Quran says they do zikir. You know, they do tasbih to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So when you show a leaf, I don't have a leaf in front of me, but I love leaves because they've got tiny holes called stomata, which releases oxygen and brings in carbon dioxide. So at my institute, for example, we are trying to infiltrate curricula of the religious schools, curricula of the conventional schools. By whose help? By the help of the current Ministry of Education, by the help of the current Ministry of Environment. Okay, and there are some positive things. So I think at any one time, we can only look at the positives, work upon those, right? But never losing, of course, this greater web of interesting things that's happening. As I said, I was invited via your good intentions to Greece as well. But I opted not to go because I thought that, choose, Azizan, you want to go to Greece and you know, be with those clever people and do some more decorations. Oh, go to this village, in Kuala Lumpur, wherever it is, speak to the folks who don't understand how plastic is damaging the earth, who don't understand that, you know, by polluting the rivers and all of that, they will lose their source of life. Which one? So there's always priorities upon priorities. So I'm not answering the question, no, I'm not. But what I'm saying is, in your own sphere of Brother Muhammad from Barbados, in your own sphere of influence, okay, you can ask the questions, you can try to get the answers, but you must do something. You must connect yourself to the Almighty, the Hulk, the mighty Creator. And guess what? Will He show the way? Yes, He will show the way. So interaction with the Quran, I don't want to sound pious. I'm not an Arabicist. My Arabic is just very, very mediocre. Well, what do? I read from, and even that is so helpful for me. Do we do tahajjud? What the hell is tahajjud? So my point here is we have to go back to the basics of the religion itself. Only then can we make this declaration come alive. Otherwise, like you said, we'll be pronouncing that ayat, this hadith, that hadith, with no effect. And what happens is that we know that our time, all of us, are running out, right? I mean, how many years are we going to do this? And do not worry about the final outcome. I don't think we should worry about the final. What is important is the here and now. What do we do? And what effects, what results we have, only God will tell. You know, I mean, like this, like everybody has agreed. This COVID is so strange. COVID-19. I have this small joke. You know, people keep saying virus, viral, that virus. And in our tradition, Malay tradition, if you speak about something enough number of times, it will come alive. There you are. You speak about virus 1 million times a day. Now the virus is here with you. But you know, I mean, it's a stupid joke. But so we have this position where we have to change our psyche first, you know, and cut out this worry. I think the worry is robbing us of much of the energy that is much needed. So Brother Muhammad from Barbados, if Allah says you will not sink, you will not sink. That is the taqwa. We're supposed to be learning through the madrasah of Ramadan. We just finished Ramadan, right? And what is taqwa? You know, feeling very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is closer to you than your jugular vein. How do we put that into practice? I mean, who am I? Personally, you know, this like Brother Ibrahim Sokai, Brother Fazlun Sokai, or Azizan is nothing, seriously. Without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Azizan is nothing, seriously. Without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, nobody is anything, you know. So this is Allah's work. We're doing this for Allah. That is first and foremost. Then you can go to Sukuk and so on and so on. Brother Fachruddin, he has wonderful stories. How he turned this pesantren, Bapak. They ran out of water because people chopped all the trees. And then guess what? The imam of that madrasah learned about the seeds. Brother Fazlun, you know about the story. He learned about the seeds and planting the seeds. And then lo and behold, the wells came alive with water. And then the imam of this pesantren is now, you know, making his influence on other pesantrens. Because in Indonesia, maybe they don't have, because of the huge population, they don't have this water system that you enjoy in other of the developed countries. So seriously, I think we should focus more, you know, and please forgive me for saying this. I think we should focus more on the doers and the good story, you know. And let's not worry too much about the effect. Who knows who will change what? Which government are we talking about? Like you said, all the governments are locked into the same system. So do we dare? Because in Malaysia, you said, Prof. Mustafa, you asked about Malaysia. Are we making changes? Yes, we are making changes. Because the pandemic has shown us the gap between rich and poor is so huge. Because of the pandemic, for 8 weeks, so many businesses closed down. I think this is a global phenomenon. Okay? And then what happened? People became charitable, you know. People donated, people did infaq. So therefore, what do you call it? Crowdfunding, what do you call it? Zakat and whatnot. You can float it up. So right now, I think government, especially in Malaysia, they're open to suggestions. They're always asking people, what do you suggest? What do you think we can do? What businesses can we restart now? So now is the time that you said this for these clever intellectuals, clever professionals, Muslim ones, to actually come up with their proposals. Those who have land. What do we do with the land? And we read articles that says that organic farming, small scale organic farming is the way to feed the world. So pick up on that idea and let's work on it, you know. So I'll stop there and I just want to give this impression that we have done so much. I've learned so much from Brother Fazlun for 40 years. I don't know, is it more than that? You were the first person, the first human on the face of the earth that sparked this interest and it has lasted until now, you know. And Brother Ibrahim and Fachruddin, everybody. So I on this path that I think is the way. But we must not look down on those who are not yet converted into this. And I always blame myself because if I'm so good, if I'm so converted, how come I'm not able to impress it upon these policymakers, these ministers, and all of this? And we at the institute were in a very good position to be close to these groups. But then again, you have to have skills, you have to have patience, like Brother Ibrahim says. You know, you cannot change things overnight. So keep going. And I honestly, don't be sad anymore. La tahzan, la tahzan. Don't be sad. Bye-bye.
It's a very potent reminder about individuals taking responsibility. Often we're complaining about the situation, but sometimes we should take the responsibility individually for what we can do within our sphere of influence. Dr. Fachruddin, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. I'm just following the word that Prophet Azizan saying that we keep continuing. I remember one ayat in the Quran that I always remember. I'malu fasayarallahu amalakum wal mu'minun. Professor Ibrahim should translate that. He said that the Quran said that you have to do what you do, and Allah, and Allah will see what you do, and also the rest of the al-mu'min and the prophet. Wal mu'minun wa rasul. So these kind of ayahs, I just remember whenever we doing this, small thing, such as, at the starting, maybe reflecting Fazlun Khalid in 1980s, I found his book, Islam and Ecology, in a shelves in WWF book, Islam and Ecology, edited by O'Brien and Fazlun Khalid. This was inspiring me. That is 30, 40 years ago. And nobody know then I translated also books that edited by Azizan, Baharuddin, and also Ibrahim, Ozdemir. I learned a lot from Islam and Ecology Harvard series. And just these years, lecturers of Islamic University coming to me and asking me to help him to replace one curriculum of what he's teaching on Islam and theology, and replacing that become Islam and ecology, Islamic theology on and philosophy program at Islamic University in Banten. They are starting to absorb, teaching for the young people at university at first semester for Islam and ecology. So I think that's beginning last 10 or maybe 15 years ago. There are not so many Islamic university absorbing as well pesantren carrying over the teaching of the environment before. So, by the way, this Islamic declaration is a kind of tools. It will become a legacy for the future, and from us to do something as a dot. Everything starting from a dot. Every word starting from a dot. So we can start from a dot to further make some word. Thank you very much.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Thank you. There was one last live question. We are sort of quite short of time. We've only got 9 minutes left. I think Sister Nana from the USA, you had a question that you wanted to ask?
No, actually it's not a question. I just want to give like a sharing. So thank you, Puan Azizan, for very spirited sharing there, and then Haj Fazlun Khalid, Professor Ibrahim, Dr. Fachruddin, thank you so much for sharing. I came in a little bit late because it's very early here in the US, but speaking about the young people, the youth, the young adults, I got a lot of my inbox is always full with them who are very interested on this. I see that, in the last couple of years, I think there is this growing interest from all the young Muslims that they started to see what all the speakers already mentioned about the connection between Islam and the environment. So they started to kind of their bulb on. They started to see it, and they start to look for searching for to get the guidance. So a lot of in the last because of this COVID-19, last Ramadan has been full of Zoom events, right? So I noticed just in the US, I found so many young Muslim groups, like, so they call it Green Muslim, or they have like very, very nice name, like Khalifa Conversation event, you know, like, and then faith, faithfully sustainable, like something like, you know, like all these young, like young people, they are very good in names. And then in Canada, there's Khalifa Group, which is also run by a very young brother. And then in the UK, I'm sure, like, you know, the XR Muslim is run by, you know, like young people. Like I was invited also to speak on one of their session, and a lot of young people. And in Indonesia, there's many new groups, new young Muslim groups on environment. They're very interested on that. So like they're reaching out to me. And then in Pakistan, in Africa, in Nigeria, in Malawi, South Africa. So there's like all this growing initiative in France, in Germany. So like we need to, I don't know, like for the lack of better words, it's to capitalize this energy from our Muslim, you know, like younger generations. And also just like my humble observation, so like in the US with the Islamic Society of North America, we have this Green Ramadan campaign for the last 5 years. And I noticed, you know, it's for the masjid, right? And I noticed, except the last one, of course, because like we are all staying home, but I noticed all the green team in every masjid started from the sisters. It's always the sisters who wants to make the change in the masjid. So now for me, like my energy, I emphasize to the women's group, and also the young people groups, because I think they're the one who's very interested in making the change. They don't want to take no for an answer. So like, you know, so then, you know, they're very very excited, and also like, you know, like fierceful on this. So I agree with Professor Ibrahim that we need to just have like, you know, like very high hope also, because I see it like, you know, in my day-to-day work, that there's a lot of this young generation of Muslim who probably going to be, you know, like finding the solution for us in the future, because we are planting the seeds with them at the moment. That's it. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the time to share.
No, thank you very much for your contribution. This has been a really inspirational sort of series of comments and questions by all our sort of contributors. There is one final question that I'll just pose. It's actually come in writing from a person who's involved with the Indonesian Ministry of Agriculture, and it's regarding any resources. So the question that's being asked is, are there any practical resources available in regards to agriculture and Islam and any sort of, the overlapping space? If anyone has any information on that, that would be appreciated. So, so any literature about climate change and agriculture, and any sort of value can be derived from this that can help farmers across the Muslim world.
Mm-hmm. I would suggest to answer that question, there are resources. Mustafa, if you could write to all of us, you know, Fachruddin, Indonesia, he has, you know, Sister Azizan and Ibrahim, Professor Ibrahim, and ourselves, and we like to support these kind of initiatives. You can write to us, and we can send him links to. There are lots of things happening right in his backyard in Indonesia and Malaysia.
Yeah.
And we can help.
I support that.
You can write our email address, and we will supply.
Yeah, now I think the person has left their details, so we'll ask them to get in touch, or we'll get in touch on their behalf. Just a reminder that this session has been recorded. So those of you who weren't able to attend, or if you'd like to sort of go over something that's been mentioned but weren't able to sort of necessarily sort of take it on board at the time, you can sort of refer back to the notes and hopefully, see it again. I don't know if there are any final remarks from our guest panels. We've only got 3 minutes left, so I'd probably just like to take this opportunity to thank all our guests for providing a truly enlightening and inspiring insight into how things have taken shape since the declaration was issued 5 years ago, and some of the challenges and opportunities. It seems like a number of very positive initiatives have been sort of inspired both at the ground level as well as further up in our government conversations. But as all the speakers have said, there are several systemic issues that we're not going to be able to solve immediately, but we can take individual responsibility. That's the key. Strengthening our connection with Allah, communicating this message to the younger generation who are the future and who are able to sort of implement this practically in our lives, in our day-to-day lives, by thinking globally, but acting locally. And inshallah, change will be effected, and we have seen that. I'd also like to thank all our participants for today's discussions who've helped to enrich our knowledge and understanding of this important arena. And finally, I'd like to end with the words of the Prophet ﷺ in a hadith mentioned in Muslim. And this is actually at the end of the Declaration on Global Climate Change. It says, "The world is sweet and verdant, and verily Allah has made you stewards in it. Indeed, Allah sees how you equip yourselves, how you behave yourselves, basically with the environment around you." So on that note, just like to thank everyone again, and yeah, please stay in touch. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Walaikum
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Inshallah. See you again.
Bye-bye.
See you.
See you.
See you. See
Bye.
you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.